Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be going through my favorite films of 2024. This year I assembled a list of 16 films, mainly because, well, a list of 16 just feels right on Letterboxd. But first, before I get into this, I want to mention two things. For one, I am doing this without any video because my family's in town, and so I do not have time, and I had to tear down my set, and so this is going to be a very quick run through of my best films of 2024. But also, before I get into this, I also want to mention some honorable mentions, because this has been a great year for movies, and sadly, these didn't quite make the cut despite them being excellent films. The Brutalist, Conclave, A Different Man, Heretic, Wicked, Furiosa, Love Lies Bleeding, Will and Harper, and surprisingly, Sonic 3. Yeah, that movie was great. And as always, this is a personal favorites list of mine, and so there's no doubt going to be some films on this list that you either haven't even heard of or you will disagree with me on, but like I said, this is a personal list of mine, and so if anything, I hope to put some, interesting films on your radar, and I also very much want to hear what your list is in the comment section down below. But without further ado, here are my favorite films of 2024.
And shocking. You get out there Mr. Midnight, and you knock him dead.
There are a few trends that you will see throughout my list, and one of them is horror films. I love the genre, and this was one of the most unique films to come out in the past year for horror. David Dastmalchian plays a wonderfully charismatic talk show host attempting to save his ratings by hosting a live exorcism, and it plays out in real time as the show goes on, and the final film is one that I'll be revisiting often.
I'm still here.
Another trend you'll see is films that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, because I absolutely love Sundance, and it's actually right around the corner at the end of January, so of course I'll be having a bunch of reviews out for the next set of Sundance films, but of course I want to talk about the Black Box Diaries, which is one of my favorite documentaries at the festival. It follows a journalist in Japan who is making a documentary about her own sexual assault, along with her near impossible task of getting justice for the crimes committed against her. If you haven't heard of this film, definitely seek it out. Another Sundance film has hit the list. Thelma is essentially a Mission Impossible film, only instead of starring Tom Cruise, it stars 90-year-old June Squibb, with her climbing these stairs acting as the most intense action scene you'll ever see. It has irrevocably strong humor and heart as it tackles a woman's life reaching a point of no independence. I'm sure this one will mean more and more to me as the years go by.
Wow, those guys are jerks.
Wow, those guys are jerks.
If Thelma has future implications of relatability for me, Inside Out 2 is extremely relatable to me right now. I mean, who didn't have debilitating anxiety growing up, or even still to this day? The original film is one of Pixar's best, and they were able to live up to the extreme heights that Pixar has established for themselves with this sequel.
People are gonna love that.
This movie's gross. It's disgusting in all of the best ways. Coralie Fargeat takes the wild concept of duplicating oneself to become young again all the way and never holds it back. If I could wish for any film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, it'd be this one, along with a Demi Moore acting nomination. This movie is so fun.
3, 2, 1.
Let's keep the horror trend going with one of my favorite franchises of all time. Alien Romulus takes everything I loved about every Alien film prior and mashes it together to make a true love letter to the series. But for me, it also paves its own path in this series and stands out with one of my favorite endings of the entire year.
What? Can I at least touch my old ass?
Oh my god, you need to be locked up.
I didn't think a movie about a teenage girl getting too high on shrooms and meeting her future self would be so profound to me. This is another Sundance film that I was able to relate to so incredibly much. It is sweet, funny, has a solid love story, but at its core, it's yet another great coming-of-age story that hits you right in the feels.
I am a wild robot.
The animated films category at the Oscars this year are going to be a toss-up between Inside Out 2, Flow, which is another honorable mention of mine, and Memoirs of a Snail. Somehow the wild robot still manages to come out on top this year. It's a wonderful story about motherhood with stunning animation, and it's definitely one of DreamWorks' best.
Nosferatu.
This is the latest release on this list, so maybe recency bias has lifted it higher than it should be, but I absolutely loved Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. It takes his signature style and oddities as a filmmaker and injects it into this gothic romance horror film. It's one of those films where I want to shout out particular performances, but I think I just end up listing everyone in the cast, but honestly, Willem Dafoe, so good. And Lily Rose Depp, and Nicholas Hoult, and Bill Skarsgård, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Emma Corrin, and Ralph Ineson. Literally everybody in this film is so good.
I wouldn't have missed this for the world.
There are so many reasons I love this documentary. For one, it is a Sundance doc, so you got me there, but it's also an incredibly tragic yet inspirational story of the real-world hero, Christopher Reeve. I don't think there was a single film this year that had me as much of an emotional wreck as I was watching this film. I was a blubbering mess. And we're also less than a year away from a new Superman film, which I talked about in my most anticipated movies of 2025 video, which will be coming out very soon. Coming from someone who didn't care for Jesse Eisenberg's debut feature, I absolutely loved A Real Pain. This really was the antithesis of his first film. It's a film filled with incredibly likable and relatable characters with struggles that connect to a deeper level. Eisenberg is great in this movie, but Kieran Culkin absolutely steals the show in a hilarious and heartfelt performance.
Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
Alright, so I promise this is the last Sundance film on this list, and it's definitely one of those films that will be on my personal list, but probably not many others. Jane Schoenbrunn has shown that they're a great experimental filmmaker with We're All Going to the World's Fair, and this film keeps that experimental side fully intact while having a more streamlined story, even if it is still extremely experimental. It has deeply tragic themes for a trans person's experience of feeling the need to bury their true selves deep inside, with two excellent performances at the core. It's definitely not a film for everyone, but it is definitely my kind of weird, and I have a great video that was probably my most successful video over the entire last year, which I love that video. Go check it out. I also love this film. I mean, what is there to say about Anora besides the fact that its script and its story and its characters are so genuine and authentic that I think of all the movies this year, this felt the most realistic. I just really love Sean Baker's style, and I can see somebody watching this film and not really getting it or understanding it if you haven't really dived into the world of Sean Baker, but his fly-on-the-wall type of, filmmaking with very naturalistic performances, especially with Mikey Madison as the lead, as Annie/Nora inside of this film, it is just so raw and real, and it just flows so incredibly well. It's definitely one of my favorite movies just by entertainment value and just watching a natural film just kind of progress as the story goes forward. It's also incredibly funny, shot very well, and again, Mikey Madison, give her all the awards today. Yes, Longlegs is my number 3, and I will not apologize for it no matter how hard the comment section of my Longlegs video destroyed me in that video, because apparently it's unpopular to really love this movie. I don't know, this movie just had the right vibe for it, and I know that I personally, when it comes to horror films, I do like the more psychological and more unsettling and dreadful films. I mean, if you look at all the horror films on this list, none of them are really fun and, bright horror films. I didn't have Smile 2 here on this list, even though I did enjoy Smile 2. This is the type of horror movie that scares me. It's not the jump scares, it's not the loud sounds inside the musical score, it's the deeply unsettling performances from Nicolas Cage, the really odd yet also unsettling performance from Mike Monroe, and the excellent direction from Osgood Perkins.
Hey, I love you.
I know.
I think my number 1 and 2 are going to be pretty interchangeable for me, but the moment that I watched Challengers, I knew that it was going to be one of my favorite films of the year, and it was a film that I couldn't wait to watch a second time. I work at a theater. Every single time I heard the musical score, I was just walking down the hallway. If I knew it was at the ending of the film, I would go there and watch the ending of that movie again and again, because it's probably the most enthralling, ending to a film I've seen since Whiplash. I think another trend you probably noticed throughout this list is that I'm very much a director's person. If there's a director attached to a film that I'm very attached to, I'll probably love their movie, and I'm very excited for their movies. If you see my most anticipated movies of 2025 list, you'll see that a lot of them are because of the directors attached to those products. And Challengers just had a very exciting tone to it, with a very complicated and just twisty and turny love story where the tennis scenes were the sex scenes in the movie. It was very exciting and original, and just it was such a fun time in a theater. I think it was one of my favorite theater experiences throughout the entire year, especially that ending, which is still mind-blowing to me, still intense to me to this very day.
You can destroy a thing, has the real control of it.
I feel like I have to apologize for kind of having the boring choice as my #1 film of the year, but I can't deny my feelings. I absolutely did love Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, and I think when it comes to theatrical experiences, I think my favorites were definitely watching Alien Romulus in theaters for the first time with an audience. That was really fun, or watching Challengers. The ending of that film in theaters was great. Seeing Interstellar in 70mm IMAX was incredible, but also watching Dune Part 2 in that same 70mm IMAX theater was just mind-blowing. I absolutely loved both of these Dune films. I think I liked the first Dune movie more every single time I watched it, but the first time I watched Dune Part 2, I knew that it was a masterpiece in so many different ways. It is Denis Villeneuve at his absolute best, and I cannot wait for Dune Part 3 whenever that comes out. But that is just going to be my list for my favorite films of 2024. Were there films that you haven't heard about in this list, and did I convince you to go seek them out here in the next year? I would highly recommend all of these films along with all my honorable mentions. And if you want to see a more comprehensive list from me with all the films that I watched in 2024, check out my Letterboxd, Brad K. Stowell. You can see it's all there. I actually watched 110 new releases throughout the calendar year of 2024, which I think is a record for me, but we'll have to see how I do in 2025, which honestly looks like a great year for films right off the bat. So I will have my video out for my most anticipated films of 2025 here out in a couple days, along with just weekly reviews for every single new movie that comes out as the year progresses. But that is going to be it for me. Make sure you guys let me know what you think of my list, and also put down your list in the comment section down below. I cannot wait to get into 2025, and I'll see you all in the next one.